Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Growing Up in Scientology. We are talking again today with Geir Isene.
Oh, that's actually pretty good.
Geir, what did you think of the feedback to the interview that we did?
My summary, which I will put as a comment to this video, is a short hyperlist that I did sort of to jot down the points so I wouldn't forget anything. Basically, on the videos itself, I would conclude that, Aaron, you're a smart guy and you really get me, because in your discussion with Chris and with Nathan, you really did get my points and you tried to convey them as I would have. So that's an A plus. And I would say Nathan is a really smart guy. I didn't know that he existed. I didn't know of Nathan. I didn't know who he was. So that was an interesting acquaintance, getting to know him through the video that you made as a follow-up to mine. Yeah, I appreciate his feedback. And there was a lot of comments back and forth and everything. And I have a couple of things I would like to say about that. One is regarding your, I think, maybe something that is close to your heart, whether Scientology is a religion or not. I have a couple of points on that. Then I have a point about all this rah-rah that people went on with, oh, he's so insensitive, he said rape, and he said, oh, you should just get over it, and he's not empathetic towards people who have, disconnection through Scientology with family members, etc. I have a couple of points on that one. And then I have one on the positive outlook of life. And why that is important and how that can be achieved. So these are the points I would like to cover.
Okay,
and I would like to keep it short because basically I have a role-playing session coming with my kids. And also there is another soccer game later.
Is there a World Cup?
It's the World Cup. Yeah, it's the World Cup. So,
I've been paying
which
attention.
it's
real quick,
Denmark just beat Peru.
How much time would you like to try to limit this to?
Like max 30 minutes.
30 minutes? That's going to be a tough sell, but let's do it. Have you had a chance to hear any of the interviews that Nathan and I have actually done on my channel?
No, I have not.
I'm going to send you a link to part 3. Nathan and I have actually done about 15 hours of interview.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to send you a link to part 3.
So I'd like to just go through that because I wrote down some of these points. Nathan mentioned that he was living in Asia and that the Buddhists he has talked to or seen or observed treat Buddha as a god, right? Now, I have met high-level Buddhists that do not treat him as a god and doesn't have that viewpoint at all. One person comes to mind, I think it was 2009, with Sharmapa of the Karmakaja Buddhism, which is the Diamond Way Buddhism. And Sharmapa and Karmapa are the two leaders of this religion. And whenever Karmapa is out because he's died and he's about to be reincarnated, then Sharmapa is the guy that is in charge of the religion and is the guy that reinstates Karmapa and validates that he is the actual reincarnation of Karmapa, right? So they leapfrog. And I had the honor of meeting Sharmapa in Copenhagen in 2009. So I drove down there for the sole purpose of talking to him. And we spent about an hour and a half. And we talked about Buddhist things and the Tibetan politics and the invasion of China and all of this. And he is a really nice guy and a really intelligent guy. And he definitely does not look upon Buddha as a god. Neither does his followers. So it's interesting to note that there is such a way of Buddhism or branches of Buddhism where they do not look upon it as anything godlike, the Buddha. I would say many of the comments I've seen on the videos and also regarding Scientology is, I would say many of them fall into the argumentum ad consequentiam, which is the appeal to consequence. And it is a fallacy that when you say, I don't want it to end up being treated as a religion because that gives them certain privileges, like tax-exempt status or elevated respect in society, etc. I think this is an American thing. Because in Norway, nobody gives a fuck if it's a religion or not. Because you don't get automatic tax-exempt status, you don't get automatic whatever. So there is no consequences that could be, I don't like the consequences, therefore I would construct my argument so that it is not viewed upon as a religion. Because this is what I see with many Americans. They don't like it to be considered as a religion for any purpose, and therefore arguments are constructed backwards to make sure that that does not happen, which is intellectual dishonesty at its core. Going through the actual definition of religion at dictionary.com, I just jot this off. 1, a set of beliefs concerning the cause, nature, and purpose of the universe. Basically, Scientology would, of course, it conforms to that, especially when considered as the creation of a superhuman agency or agencies, right? And we can say that the Thetans, according to Hubbard, created the universe. Therefore, they are superhuman as we are human now, degenerated Thetans, etc. So super, higher than what we are now, being Thetans in its original forms, would create the universe. Therefore, it conforms to that definition or part of the definition as well. Usually involving devotional and ritual observances, plenty of that, and often containing a moral code governing the conduct of human affairs. Oh, the ethics of Hubbard is like screaming at you and saying you have to conform to this ethical code and you have to be, on a very narrow path of what he says is okay or not. And then the second definition, a specific fundamental set of beliefs and practices generally agreed upon by a number of persons or sects. The Christian religion, the Buddhist religion. So by those two definitions, I would say, yeah, definitely Scientology is a religion.
Sure.
I do understand that people don't want it to be a religion because of what I said regarding the consequences, but that's inconsequential to this.
Do you grant the truth to what Nathan did say, that one would experience populations of Buddhists who do treat Buddha like a god or think of him as a god?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Technically, Hubbard has always said he was nothing but a man. And yet, in keeping Scientology working, he says, we will not speculate as to how I came to rise above the bank. And there's not a Scientologist on this earth that will acknowledge they treat Hubbard as anything like a god. But when I've had the opportunity to witness how Christian ministers treat the Bible, it is the exact same way Scientologists treat L. Ron Hubbard policy. They're constantly just interpreting, what did Hubbard say, what did Hubbard say, what did Hubbard say, and that's all that matters. So I'm going on and on here, but I'm pointing the discrepancy between Scientologists saying they don't treat L. Ron Hubbard like a god, except if you examine their behaviors and activities, they certainly do treat him the way Christians treat God, or they treat his policies the way Christians treat the Bible. But there's not a Scientologist on the planet that would actually see that point, right?
I agree.
And what did you think of Chris Shelton's comments that where he said he could debate both arguments, whether Scientology was a religion or was not. I was pretty struck by his argument that the leadership of the church is still in on the con. It's not possible for the leadership of the church to truly believe everything they're saying. But that give it 100 years, give it 200 years, if Scientology still exists, that perhaps there would be a chance that the Church of Scientology would be run by someone who did truly believe everything they were saying, and that in his eyes that would perhaps cross the line over into belonging to the groups of what is considered acceptable religion. What did you think about that?
I don't think it's a matter of the leadership thinking this or that. I think it's the matter of the congregation of the people around it that believes it's a religion or not. Are you getting a bad connection with me now?
Yeah, just momentarily. Well, for about 45 seconds there, it was a little weird. We'll keep going. It seems decent right now. Well, I think the reason Nathan mentioned the whole thing of some Buddhists do treat Buddha like a god is Buddhism is often cited as the best analogy for how Scientology could be a religion when it doesn't believe in a supreme being. So do you think Buddhism is a correct analogy there?
It's pretty good as an analogy, but Buddhism is definitely different than Scientology in so many aspects. But the point is, the definition of a religion does not include a god. Mm-hmm. That's the point.
Right. Understood.
So analogy or not, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I certainly have to agree with you on, did you call it consequentialism? Where people don't want to acknowledge that because of the consequences of acknowledging it's that. And I certainly agree. I think you get a lot of people who are religious that don't want Scientology to be allowed to be included in the conversation of what they consider to be sacred. And I understand the position. It's just not necessarily an intellectually honest position. In the United States, like you said, you have the tax exemption consequence. I think that even though I have engaged in these conversations about why I believe Scientology meets the definition of religion. I certainly don't think it meets the qualifications for what should get a group tax exemption. And I wish those things were separated in the United States.
Yes, I definitely agree to that. And I also don't think it should be, any more respected than it should be on its own merits just because it's called a religion. It's also something that should be separated out from its definition of religion or not. So I don't think it should be elevated. I don't think it should be given tax exemption or any other merits or benefits or whatever. I think Scientology is what it is, as bad as it is or whatever, but it's still a religion in my viewpoint. And regarding the definition, it clearly fits those. So that's where I want to leave that. Yeah. So people can and will debate this over and over.
Sure. Okay, what was the next point I want to move on to?
Oh, he's insensitive because he doesn't care about people who are, the victim of the disconnection policy of Scientology, etc.
All right, what do you want to say about that?
And I want to say something about that because I had a change of heart on this one. Reading the comments and looking at this again, a quote that was given by Raphael, one of the top commentators on my blog. And a few years back, he said something that was quite interesting. And this brought this quote into new light, I would say. I would just read the quote. He said, "When I was a kid, my purpose was to find the meaning of life. Now my purpose is to give life a meaning." And I have to say, who am I to judge what people should put as meaning to their life or not? If being anti-Scientology gives people meaning, or being pro-Scientology gives people meaning, or debating I'm a victim of the disconnection policy, if that gives meaning, or doing videos like you do, if that gives you meaning in life, then sure, I'm all for it. It's perfectly fine. I mean, as I wrote down here, hell, I put meaning into writing programs in Fortran. I put meaning into, tinkering with old Hewlett-Packard calculators, for God's sake. And if I put meaning into my life by doing those, basically silly things, then I would say I cannot judge a person that puts meaning into his life by, producing Leah's program or debating Scientology online or going after Scientology's tax-exempt status or whatever. I don't care about those things. I care about Fortran and my HP calculators, etc. I don't care about Scientology. This is probably, I will not swear on this, but this is probably one of the last interviews I'm going to do on Scientology for the rest of my life, I guess, if something strange does happen. I'm so fed up with it. I really don't care. So there's so much other things I would like to do in life, but I do respect people who gives the meaning to sort of go through the trauma or talk to other people one-to-one or to you, to many, whatever. I think it's fine. I think it's totally fine.
I guess how I would respond to that is, well, that's awesome. I think there's value if someone's communicating about this subject because they find it either educational for others and they therefore find value in doing it, or if somehow it's helping them work through whatever experiences they feel like maybe they're still with. Where I would agree with what I think your point was in the first place was that perhaps it's not a healthy thing to be involved in. If it's like, if it's compulsive, if they're using it as the reason why they cannot succeed presently, then perhaps the activity is not a healthy one. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that could be true or that could be the case for some people. Obviously, the interview that we did, the most controversial part of the entire thing, or what people objected to the most, was that singular issue of the get over it, right?
Yeah.
What did you think about? Okay, in my chat with Nathan, I was pointing out I knew you weren't necessarily responding to anything I could possibly be offended by, because I knew, well, you weren't even aware of anything I could possibly be offended by, so I couldn't possibly take it personally. And then he said, well, if Geir has been so disconnected from Scientology for all this time, what was he responding to?
I was referring to all the discussions on my own blog up until I think 4 years ago. And there, if you look at my blog, there are certain threads that have gotten way north of 1,000 comments. I think that the one that got most is like 1,800 comments. And there's a lot of back and forth, and people have a lot of stuck viewpoints on things. And these are the top commenters on my blog. And some of them, I would say, you know, at least up until a few weeks ago, I would say, okay, get over it. Just please, just leave that base and just move on in your life. Now I'd say, okay, if that harping on this thing would give the person meaning, I would say, okay, fine. I'm okay with that.
I pointed out the fact that you do executive coaching or some iteration of that. I've never really asked you exactly what you do. And I said, I could just imagine Geir sitting down with a client who's up on something that happened 20 or 30 years ago, that I could see it being like the perfectly appropriate thing to say, to be like, dude, get the fuck over it already. But so my question to you would be, have you ever professionally, as a coach, dealt with someone who was a former Scientologist?
No, actually, I would try to avoid any ex-Scientologists and coaching them. Yeah, the last point I have is on the positive outlook on life. I think Nathan was commenting on that. There cannot be possible to have a positive outlook on anything that happens to you. But I'm saying this, positivity is a choice. And if you so choose, you can extract something out from, something positive out from everything. It is possible to extract something of value after you have gotten through the trauma, after you've gotten through the shit. You can sit and reflect on it and come up with, yeah, maybe I could have learned that was an experience. Even going to the dentist, sometimes I say, no, forget about the anesthetic. Let's just do it. Just because I wanted pain, to see if it's possible to learn to handle the pain better. You know, it's something positive to take out from that as well.
And I think I said that I would ask you this the next time we spoke. How did you get over the disappointment at each successive OT level?
Well, first of all, I didn't have really any expectations when I went into every level. I went in with, okay, let's see what this does. This was my whole journey up the bridge. I went into grade 0. Let's see what this does. Oh, this was interesting. Oh, what did it give me? And that was what I took out from it. And each successive step, I did the same thing. But nobody ever sold to me, on this level, you were going to go full exterior. And then I can extract the positives out of that, and I would move on. And I would have stopped. If I didn't get any gains from OT4, I would have stopped. Okay, so specifically on OT4, I got this extreme ability to visualize stuff. Like, you know, athletes are doing this all the time. Try to visualize what is going on in the race they are going to compete in. And I can then have multicolor spheres turning around if I want. I could fly landscape of my imagination. I had so vivid imagination after doing OT4 that I can dream Technicolor, full visual, full audio, blah, 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 which was crazy cool. So that was one gain I got. Nobody sold me that gain. I just got it. And that was what kept me going to, let's see what OT5 can give me. And on OT5, my allergy for cats just went. I don't know if that was ever addressed. I don't care, but my allergy for cats just went. Cool enough. So I went on to OT6. That was not the only gain I got from OT5, with several others, but that was just one example. So,
are you confident that what the benefit you experienced was directly tied to what you were doing on the OT levels, or is it more like you don't really care if it was?
It's more like I don't care if it was, but I have a lot of examples where there was actually direct consequences of me going into session, going out of session, and this happened. But then again, even that doesn't matter now. I got some gains. I'm happy. I'm joyful in life. Stuff are going the right way.
Right.
You know, who's the fuck?
Sure.
And people can debate this left, right, and center, whether this was gains or not, or whatever. But, you know, this is what it was.
I have always felt that, looking back, it seems that Scientologists are incapable of actually understanding that correlation does not equal causation, and that their whole method of proving that Scientology works is by confusing correlation with causation. What do you think about that?
I agree. I completely agree. What correlation does should be to make people interested in finding out what the actual causation is. I find a lot of weird people in Scientology. But the question is because they become weird in Scientology, or is that because Scientology attracts weird people? And that's where the correlation and causation is confusing. So, and I don't know, and I don't care.
Right.
It's just it is a correlation. Therefore, I avoid Scientologists.
Right. Is that I never really had to pay money to do Scientology. That somewhat allowed me to ignore the bad and focus on the good. I have always felt that if I was ever actually paying with dollars to do Scientology, that I would have been much more likely to be very disappointed. Was it just not a lot of money relatively to you, or did you feel that what you gained was actually worth the money you spent?
I think it was actually worth the money I spent, probably the double of the money I spent. I can tell you I spent $200,000 during my 25 years. That's about what I earn in 1 year now.
Okay, cool. All right, so I saw some comments on the channel asking if you were going to reignite your efforts to talk about this subject or get your YouTube channel going or something like that. And it sounded like you were considering it. So you've decided no?
No, I'm considering doing my YouTube channel, but I don't think I will be covering Scientology a lot. Okay. So I'll be covering all kinds of stuff. It might be that I will be revisiting Scientology or have some, chat about that or whatever. But the main point in doing the vlogging would be to just express whatever I have in my mind at the moment. So that could be anything, really. It could be how I coach an athlete. It could be soccer. It could be sex. It could be astrophysics, whatever.
Does it get to the point where you're just fatigued talking about it, or do you find it as in any way damaging to you?
No, it's just boring. I mean, I've been talking about this since 2009, and now it's like, what else can I say about it? It's just boring. And the reason why I'm doing this interview with you right now is to sort of wrap up, because I'm revamping my homepage, my blog, and I will have one page there with all the videos on Scientology, because people come to me and they ask, oh, can you do this talk in Oslo or this talk in Copenhagen or whatever? I would say, no, just play these videos, because I'm doing this to wrap that up, to make sure that if somebody wants my viewpoint, they can see these videos in succession, ending with this video that we have right now, and they would be satisfied. They don't have to ask me any more questions.
There's a criticism of the, well, I don't even like the term anti-Scientology movement, because I don't even feel those are the right words to use. But my question to you is, when you were actively talking about this subject, did you actually run into that where you felt that you deviated from what people thought you were allowed to be saying and, tried to beat you over the head or ostracize you because of it? Like, was that a thing you ran into?
Yeah, but I think it was worse then than it is now. I think it has become more nuanced since I came out in 2009. Anyway, there was a fair amount of old timers there, etc. And when those sort of drifted out, it became a toxic place. In 2009 to 2012, it was really toxic. And that was the time when you had this anti-Scientology. If you said something outside the talking points, you would get bashed over the head with a lot of shit. But now I think it's to be a lot more nuanced. So I think it's the freedom of speech has become better, I think. So, and you're part of that, and others are part of that. I think you're doing a good service to make sure that we can have a logical debate about Scientology.
All right, well, I hope a time does come in the future where we can have more conversations, but to be continued on that. And to everybody else, thanks for watching. Feel free to chime in the comments section, and we'll see you guys later.
Thank you. Bye.